Hello, happy Advent, and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and it's time for some flannel panel. Our usual guests, Joe Heschmeyer and Chris Check, are here, and we're getting ready to discuss the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. Some of it is specifically Catholic news. Some of it is just news that needs a little flannel panel conversation about it in order for society to be able to settle on a reasonable answer, because that's what we do here. We help society. Chris Check is president of Catholic Answers. Chris, thanks for being here for the flannel panel.
I think in my 57, nearly 58 years, that's the first time someone has suggested that I'm helping society.
Really?
I want to thank you for that,
I've
Cy.
met your sons, and even if indirectly, you have helped society by producing such fine young men.
Well, Jackie did all the heavy lifting.
And also with us, Joe
And
Heschmeyer.
continues to in the marriage, by the way, I should say.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Well, she brings all the personality to the marriage.
Yeah,
You bring
yeah.
a lot of other good things, I imagine. Joe Heschmeyer is our other guest. Joe, of course, is an apologist here at Catholic Answers, author of a bunch of things. Hi, Joe.
I'm afraid to even ask your insights into my marriage and family life after that assessment.
Well, I'm just going to say this, Joe. I'm disappointed that it's only you, because just moments ago it was you and your oldest child, and he's the sweetest looking boy.
Youngest child.
Oh, your youngest child.
Born.
And was he
Yeah.
wearing a koala sweatshirt? What was that? Was he a koala?
I think it's a bear.
Oh, he's a bear.
A disproportionate amount of his winter clothing is animal themed in ways that you just think like, oh, I guess you could do that as an adult too, but nobody ever does. Like
I know.
It's like a thin line between a winter coat and a costume at this age.
Yeah, but all clothes should be. I don't know. I don't think we should get over that.
No.
We should start wearing animal-themed clothing.
You know, we should have some kind of clothing theme for this show where we all like wear the same thing.
All right, for January, let's work on that. I do want to
right.
say that I had the good fortune. Did I already mention this on the flannel panel? I can't recall, but this is one of the benefits of senility. You get to repeat yourself. So I had the good fortune to be with the Heschmeyer family in Kansas a couple of months ago and went to Mass with them on Sunday. And Joe's oldest daughter, who is about, what, 2 and 3?
3. Yeah, she just turned 3.
It was great. Right at the time, at the end of Mass, she announced to her father, "Dad, it's time to go."
Good for her. Well, she did it at the end, at least.
Yeah, so she has a keen sense of the liturgical schedule there in the Heschmeyer.
She does. You know, her favorite prayer to pray along with is the St. Michael prayer at the end of Mass. It is probably not a coincidence that it's the one at the end of Mass.
Yeah.
She likes it partly because it mentions spiritual warfare. And so she will interrupt it 2/3 of the time when we get to the devil. And she'll go, "The devil? Is that the one who goes?" And then she hisses as loud as she can and pretends she doesn't know the answer to the question.
Yeah, well, that's good. You got to have that signal that tells you when you're a kid, like, well, I don't know where we are, but if I hear St. Michael the Archangel, I know we're just about at the end of this.
Oh, yeah. When she was like, she had not even turned 2 yet. She was like late 1. At the Agnus Dei, she would turn to me and say, "Is Mass done, Dad?" And I'd say, "Not yet." And she'd go, "Almost." And it was like that every day. And it was just like a little routine.
Yeah, well, she's learning
So-
then, because at the Agnus Dei, it's still a ways to go.
Yeah. I'll give out the number if you want to. If we talk about something you want to talk about, we'll try to get you on. But I'm not making any promises because I'm just not good at getting people on the. I'm not good at any part of managing this show when Chris and Joe are here. And don't say, "Oh, what's different from any other day, Joe?" I know your attitude about my hosting. 888-318-7884.
I love your
is
hosting,
the number.
Cy.
Thank you, Chris, and I love your hosting.
And me and Ann, we love your hosting.
Oh yeah. Can I say her last name? or no?
I don't know.
I
don't know. You're a fan.
She's a woman of very fine taste.
She is
Very good.
a lovely woman. Ann, we love you.
And I hope you're well, Ann. The number 888-318-7884. All right, so the way this works is I propose a story and see if these two want to talk about it. We've never yet had them not want to talk about a story. As a matter of fact, stopping them is usually the hard part. But usually most of what is said is unrelated to the story that I mentioned. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Big news today. Did it come today or yesterday about P22? I think it was today.
I think actually this is about a week old.
Oh, is it really a week old?
Yeah, you just don't keep up with
I don't look at the news
wildlife in
except
Los
like
Angeles.
20 minutes before this show. I start looking at the news to see what we should talk about. Do you know about P22 there in
I
in
don't. I
Kansas?
saw that, and I was trying to figure out what pope that was.
P22, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Right.
That's a long time ago. That's probably so far back it's a martyr pope. P-22
Is a mountain lion.
is a mountain lion.
Well, was a mountain lion.
Is now a rug. But excuse
No,
me. No, I shouldn't have said it that way.
Oh my gosh!
That showed a real insensitivity
the
on
woke
my
are
part.
coming after you, Cy Kellett.
In Los Angeles, Joe, downtown in Los Angeles,
The city just north of us.
yeah, there lived a mountain lion in the midst of the human population, and
No, not downtown.
well, pretty much. I mean, Griffith Park.
Well, yeah. So it's surrounded by development, residential
Right.
and urban development.
But I think one thing.
But
people,
Griffith Park is an open space.
there's a lot of open space out there, and Los Angeles is actually full of open space.
It is.
And probably full of delicious raccoons as well. But I mean, one of the things people don't know about Los Angeles is like frequently there are bears in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like within Los Angeles, you see on the news, a bear in the swimming pool and all that. So, but P-22 was did you just put a firearm on the thing called a P-22? I wasn't aware of that firearm. Did they name it after the mountain lion? But first of all, a great outpouring of grief over P-22 that I have mixed feelings about. I'm not exactly sure how to feel about it. I think it's good to love animals. No, I know it's good to love animals in a certain sense. You know, an appropriate love of them as gifts from God. But I'm not so sure about the international outpouring of grief over the death of P-22.
Well, there was some debate too. So P-22 was not well and had lived the life expectancy that you might expect from a mountain lion
in a city,
in a city, and had a number of internal organ problems, including with his liver. But it looked like the death blow, or
you got hit by a
Sorry,
car.
real quick question. How do you or anyone else know the liver state of P-22? Were there doctors regularly involved?
Yes,
yeah.
there were.
Well, he was tagged.
And
he
they
tagged.
wore a collar so they'd know where he was.
So he was struck by a
California panda.
He was struck by a vehicle and was discovered injured, and then they tranquilized him and then did an examination and said, "This is," and that they even thought of this, I guess, really goes to your question, Si. But then the veterinarian surgeon said he has so many other problems that the surgery is not equal to the effort.
Right. In Canada, they would have killed him years ago, but they don't let the elderly get very far in Canada.
He's having a good day.
Well, something to say here, mountain lions are not endangered in California.
You know, that's what I saw these people say, endangered mountain lions. We got mountain lions all over the place.
Nor, by the
they
way,
attack people like at least once a year in Orange County,
so-
which is perfect. Like if you're going to attack people as a mountain lion, do it in Orange County.
Nor, by the way,
Wait, why? I don't know enough about people in Orange County.
Cy is making friends all over our listening
Smart
area.
aleck. That's just how people in San Diego County feel about Orange County.
Nor, by the way, are bobcats. In fact, we have bobcats over here.
Bobcats all over the
in
place.
in the park where I'm a volunteer docent, trail guide or whatever, Mission Trails Regional Park, and we have bobcats there. I've never seen one, but I know they're there, and they get captured on the camera, and
I'll say I saw one in the subdivisions near the office in El Cajon.
Sure.
We were driving around.
Well, and
there was one just like walking around in a residential area.
Right.
And, I'm not from a place where bobcats exist. And I was like, is that a wolf? And I was like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Is that a wolf?
It's not a fox.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
wait,
famous
are you,
Southern
wait a
California
minute.
wolf.
Hang on a second there, Joe. Are you sure what you saw was not a coyote?
Have you seen the size of a bobcat?
I
It doesn't look
I
like a
don't
wolf.
think it was like I've seen
coy-
coyotes before. It's possible.
Wait, but who could
like,
confuse a bobcat with a
I didn't
wolf?
get a great look.
Okay, I think you saw a coyote, which are even more
Yeah, it's
plentiful.
fine.
Wait, what time of the
possible.
evening was it that you saw it? Like,
No, it was mid-morning.
Oh,
It was
okay.
In any case,
Well,
in Illinois, Si,
Yeah.
you can hunt bobcats.
yeah.
It's permitted to hunt them because there are a lot of them, and actually
They are really cool animals.
They are. They're lovely, but you can hunt them, and their pelts fetch a good price. And what's more, the Department of Natural Resources has an interest in controlling the bobcat population for reasons like the protection of livestock and domestic pets and things of this
And
nature.
babies.
Yeah.
Well, where I live, we have coyotes, and like where sometimes my wife and I'll go up to the top of the hill and go to mass at the monastery, and there's a little old lady coyote up there, just walks around, looks at you, keeps going. And I think that's very nice. I like it.
They're vermin. Coyotes are vermin.
They are not.
They're vermin.
I don't like cats. I don't like cats of any kind,
Coyotes are
especially
vermin.
cats that look like they could do violence. And I mean house cats or any cat that looks at me like they might attack. I don't know. I'm scared of cats. So
Look,
bobcats terrify me. But
to your question, some I don't know, cultural manifestation of affection for this cat, who has been a kind of a Los Angeles mascot, is appropriate. But the effusiveness and then the opportunity to talk about shared habitat and biodiversity, et cetera, has taken this thing beyond the realm of the fact that this was a mountain lion, one, and two, it was an old one that was going to die anyway, and they are not endangered in California.
No.
They are majestic animals, by the way. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
One more bobcat thing. So a bobcat is similar to a puma, am I mistaken?
no, a puma is a mountain lion.
Oh, yeah,
they're the
excuse me,
same
a
animal.
mountain lion is a puma. Is
Yeah.
that also a panther?
A panther. Well, an American panther, yes.
Right.
Is called a.
So do you know
And
what?
a catamount. I
So-
believe
a
is the other
catamount
name
is
for it.
also right.
Okay, right. So I'm.
Or and there used to be a guy in the cartoons that called them pumas. Well, who was the guy in the cartoon? I hate pumas. I don't remember who
We
it
have
was.
different-
Do you know
different
what's?
viewing habits.
Do you know what American city is called the Panther City?
Jacksonville? No.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Detroit?
Fort Worth, Texas
Yes.
is the Panther City?
Do you know? It has nothing to do with the panther population.
Why?
Because some Yankee living in Dallas at the time published in the Dallas newspaper that Fort Worth was such a boring city that a panther could walk down the main street and no one notice. No one would notice. So Fort Worth ran with this. This was 100 years ago or whatever.
And they
More.
just made it a positive
Yeah,
thing.
and they said it's called
Good for
the
them.
It's called the Panther City.
First of all, I feel like if your city has a panther walking down the street and no one even notices, that's probably a really exciting city.
Yeah,
if a panther
yeah.
is
Yeah, that's
like
not
the
a boring
news
I don't
city.
think I don't
I
think
mean,
it doesn't bear a
You're
lot of
running
examination.
newspaper articles on a bear in a pool. I feel like that's a slow news day.
But
A panther going down the city and
it is kind of one thing I do feel about P22, and part of why I want to talk about this, in addition to it just being the most important news in the world that P22 died. There is something about modern society where we're so cut off from nature that there's a kind of desperation for anything that brings us into contact with nature. I mean, anything, any kind of contact with nature. And having a mountain lion living in the city, I think there was some way in which that made the city feel less like a city and more like nature.
Related to this, of course, is the amount of the industry that is built up around contact with nature.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So
that's a good point, Chris.
And here, a little guilty as charged, though not nearly as much as some. I mean, I do have shoes for hiking and this sort of thing, and poles, and of course, my predecessor Carl Keating was an enthusiast, the guy that kind of went overnight.
Yeah.
Hiking.
That's called camping.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank
I
you.
didn't know if you knew the name for
I
that.
got that out of my system in the Marine Corps, so
I imagine you did.
But yeah, I mean, and then there's a lot of opportunity for virtue signaling with Patagonia or whatever the various.
Right,
Look
yeah.
how much I love the environment brands are and this sort of thing. But so this is a manifestation of becoming unmoored from the truth, and so our enthusiasms tend to go one way or the other. So it's
That's a
good.
good
It's
point.
good to want to be in nature, and I actually make a resolution for next year, my friends. Spend more time in nature. You will be happier.
Yeah.
And less anxious, by the way. That's a scientific fact.
Yeah, and constantly trying to chase nature away in all of its forms to live in the artificial
That's
world.
another
It's not-
enthusiasm.
It's not healthy for us.
No.
It's not good for us. All right, well, go ahead.
On the theme of state animals, Missouri's state symbol or the state wonder dog is Jim the Wonder Dog. And I'm not making this up. You can actually go on the Missouri Secretary of State website. If you look up Jim the Wonder Dog, there's an entire article devoted to him. He was officially declared this by the Missouri General Assembly in 2017. This is a dog who was born in 1925, a Llewellyn setter who allegedly had psychic powers. And so I just wanted to say, you know what? We don't have pumas, but we do allegedly have one psychic dog who predicted every Kentucky Derby race winner correctly.
Congratulations on that.
Our state animal could cream your state animal.
Are you talking about the grizzly?
The California grizzly? Which
But
it doesn't exist anymore. But
Oh, you know what?
It's a lot of dead animals now on
on
this show. Maybe we should move on. I'm starting to feel sad.
The California flag has one bear. The Missouri flag has two. So it's a 2-to-1 fight there.
By the way, the best animal in Southern California, if you're looking for the best animal,
those little lizards that run around.
sea lion. I love sea lions.
Oh, they're awful creatures.
They smell terrible,
They
but I
just
love
make
them.
a mess of the
They
bed.
do
Disgusting,
smell terrible.
but they're
fun to
wonderful.
watch.
All right, right back. Now we're going to get into some more news, some of it even more serious than the demise of P22 on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on, Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Are you ready to spread your wings? Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with exclusive news, program information, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. To sign up, go to EWTN.com, click subscribe, enter your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. Get your wings today. It's the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. It's Flannel Panel today. Flannel Panel is when we get Joe Heschmeyer and Chris Check in here, and we talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective and more news to discuss. And I have to say, it's hard for me to do this show during Advent, especially as we're approaching Christmas, because one of the great features of Flannel Panel is dudgeon. And I'm having trouble working myself up into a state of dudgeon right now. But if you want,
Cy's been on a constant diet of eggnog all Advent, so
no, there's been chocolate in there. There's eggnog and chocolate. But I do want to talk a little bit about. It is a bit disturbing to see the level of the reporting on corruption in the Vatican. And so I want to throw a couple out at you. I mean, there's actual trial where one cardinal has to testify against another cardinal in a criminal trial. Another thing about a cardinal who, this to me also, if this is true, is about the lowest you can go. Took hundreds of thousands of dollars from a charity for the poor.
€500,000 euros.
€500,000, which is what, $83 now? And spend it on refurbishing his apartment.
Yeah.
You just feel like it's gross what's going on in the Vatican. I feel for Pope Francis because I really don't think he is in any way at all that kind of person. I mean, you couldn't imagine Pope Francis going, I'll just appropriate this 500,000 euros for my apartment.
I don't know if the apartment is the most egregious thing in Archbishop Paglia's. It's Archbishop or Cardinal? Archbishop Paglia.
I believe Archbishop.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. I thought it was Cardinal.
In his history, the desecration of the cathedral of the town in which he was Archbishop, the name of which I'm forgetting now, with the homoerotic fresco.
That's the same guy?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, again, he's got it himself painted in there.
Yeah,
too,
he has
right?
it in the nude, but for his zucchetto, and being lifted up in a net of other naked figures by Jesus into heaven is that's a desecration of a church. So quite apart from spending money that should have gone to the poor on your apartment, both are very bad. But God bless our friends J.D. Flynn and Ed Condon at the Pillar. For shining a light on this wickedness in a sober and fact-based way, without indulging in the anti-Francis polemics that often attaches to these kinds of stories, and just making it known to the faithful. Those two guys are doing great work for the reform of the church.
I think they're growing to have more reporters and analysts working with them too to figure these
and
stories out.
Very, very patient journalist, by the way, particularly in this story. I know it took a long time.
It does offend some people, though, that they're doing this kind of reporting. I think the attitude you get sometimes is, why just keep dredging this dirt up on people? And I feel like I know the answer to the question, but I want to hear what either of you has to say to that objection. Like, because this is a matter of dredging up dirt. That's exactly what they did. They dredged up dirt, and it's really gross. But should we be doing that in the church? Should Catholic journalism be doing that, Joe?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for instance, the Catechism talks about like when you can share negative information about another person, and you have to have a just cause. Like you can't just be, oh, here's this salacious rumor, you're going to really love this, or you're going to be really outraged by this. That's not good enough. But if you're sharing this because this is true, it's newsworthy, and shining a light on this situation may actually lead to a positive and productive reform, that's different. And so it is something we have to be, not just they, but we have to be even like, well, why am I consuming this? Why am I commenting on this? Why am I sharing this? Why am I, why are we talking about this right now? Those kind of questions. It cannot just be this thing happened and therefore I'm going to talk about it. There has to be a legitimate reason. Now, if something is extremely public, then yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But especially if you're talking about private information. And so I say that because, you've got, if you imagine like the media at one end of the spectrum, you've got the media covering up FDR having polio, JFK having mistresses, Catholic priests doing abominable things to children. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have the constantly looking for dirt on everyone. I just heard it called outrage archaeology, where you go digging for something to be outraged by. And so we don't want to go to either of those extremes. I don't think the guys at the Pillar err on either of those extremes. I think they do a pretty good job of showing what that virtuous mean looks like, where they actually run some, if you want, feel-good pieces. Those usually aren't the ones everybody wants to talk about.
Well, they'll do wonderful interviews with like holy bishops who are doing great work all over the world.
Yeah. And everyone's just like, yeah, give us the scandal instead.
Right. No dirt today.
I think in this case, Archbishop Hogg is a public figure. Not only did he put this scandalous mural in his or fresco in his cathedral, apart from its sort of homoerotic content, it's theologically problematic. Or I guess those two things are probably associated. But also, this is the man who presided over the recent. Now, the names of these dicasteries keep changing, Joe, so you're going to have to help me out here. But the recent academic, I'm putting the scare quotes up here, conference proposing that the church's teaching on the intrinsic evil of artificial contraception is not infallibly taught.
Oh, yeah, right. You're kind of undermining.
Yes, exactly, and can be and potentially might be changed. And in fact, his own whoever managed the Twitter feed for this dicastery, whatever intern they had managing the Twitter feed. Now, the person ended up retracting it, but several months ago, you all remember well, the church changed its teachings on geocentrism and heliocentrism, and so it's quite possible that she could change her teaching on contraception. Well, the church never taught one world system one way or the other.
No, of course not.
It is, straw man. But nonetheless, so he is a theologically heterodox figure, or at least is permitting heterodoxy, and now also the author of a couple of scandals. So in the case like this, I think the faithful deserve to know this story.
Well, let me ask you this: is there a situation in which a bishop of the Catholic Church, particularly a high official of the Catholic Church, steals from the poor to redecorate his apartment? Is there any situation in which that would not be news?
It's a good question. I'm inclined to think it would always be news. If there were to be an exception to it, a situation where there was some kind of misappropriation of funds, the bishop was maybe honest and forthright about it and sought to make amends, just said, I really sinned, I erred in this way. I'm going to try to make this better. I don't think in a situation like that where he's the one kind of in the driver's seat of doing the right thing, you want to then go ahead and like shame him to the public.
I
Although
see.
again, I mean, if someone robs you, you do have kind of a right to know you've been robbed. And in this case, he's robbed the poor of the world.
Joe, is it
He
possible?
really
Yeah.
has.
Is it possible for us, Joe, to interpret this situation in the light of the Council of Jesus Christ, who advises a course of action when you've been the recipient of a transgression? So he says, "Well, look, you go and talk to the fellow, and if it works out, good. But if it doesn't, eventually you have to bring in witnesses."
Yeah, it's true, and I think it's a bit of advice from our Lord, Matthew 18.
All right, right back with more. I don't want to finish with this one too quickly, but lots of news and reactions from the flannel panel right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
The recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade was a monumental victory for the pro-life movement. But the fight is far from over. With our new booklet, Why We're Pro-Life, we have produced the perfect tool to prepare you to have peaceful and convincing conversations to shed light on the truth about human life from conception to natural death. Catholic Answers is printing millions of copies of this booklet, and we plan simply to give them away. You can help us in two ways. First, by generously supporting this project. 25 cents prints one book. $2,500 prints 10,000, and so on. Second, by helping us distribute the booklet through your parish, your school, or the pro-life ministry you work with. Catholic Answers is going to blanket the country with why we're pro-life, but only if you step up and help us. Thank you so much. For more information, visit whyweareprolife.com.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live flannel panel. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Joe Heschmeyer, Chris Check, our guest. We're just talking a little bit about Archbishop Paglia, and then there's the thing with there's an actual trial going on, a criminal trial of a cardinal. Or is he a cardinal, or is
Cardinal
he?
Becciu.
Becciu.
Yeah, Cardinal Becciu. Yeah.
But he's not like allowed to do cardinal stuff right now, right? He's like suspended cardinal, like. He can't,
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, actually. I suspect that's probably the case.
Oh, yeah. And this also, I mean, JD and Ed did that report, a lot of good reporting on this over at the Pillar. But I don't know, like it just seems like I don't know. It has a kind of Martin Luther feel, you know, at the time where people were so outraged, they would go to Rome and they would see just the horrors of the way that the leaders of the church lived. Do you get that impression, Joe, or no?
Yeah, it's almost like there are a lot of people in Rome who aren't traditionalists who have nevertheless taken the worst parts of like the Renaissance and restored them.
They went with the wrong traditions, is what you're saying?
Yes, they went with the decadence. Yeah. They didn't go with any of the beautiful art and architecture or any of the inspiring, calls to holiness. They just went with like the bad guys from history.
Yeah, like even Cardinal Borghese knew to patronize Bernini and get all those awesome statues.
Well, maybe that's what Archbishop Paglia was doing when he thought that he was doing when he patronized the artist who painted the naked people in the
Yeah,
well, we haven't even talked about the worst of the scandals.
Please tell us
the Father Rupnik scandal.
Right.
Oh, say something about that.
Yeah.
So this is just a monstrous case. A Slovenian Jesuit who is a world famous artist he's the one who did the art for the Year for Faith. You know, if you remember the Three-Eyed Jesus, it's like Jesus and a man who's, there was a lot of criticism for the really weird style of art that he has.
It's horrible. His art is horrible.
It's on the cover of the missal right
bad
now.
art.
In my church.
It's horrible art.
Okay. All right.
Well, yeah, it just was revealed that the Jesuits had covered up that he'd been the priest for a religious community of women, and he'd preyed upon these nuns and had these really like sexually inappropriate, probably just full-on sexual relationships with like 20 of them.
Well, and by the
he was
way,
just
using his role as confessor and spiritual director, and making this weird amalgamation of spirituality and sexual congress, and these poor girls, one in particular,
really
horrible victims.
It wasn't
of this.
just like a human slip-up. It was like really kind of a blasphemous spirituality.
Yes.
Where he kissed one of them and said it was like kissing the altar.
Totally
where he
predatory and
celebrates the
blasphemous.
Eucharist.
Yes.
Why is he still a priest?
He used the. Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
He was excommunicated because you have an automatic excommunication when you absolve an accomplice. So if you have an affair as a priest, you cannot give absolution to cover up your sin.
Right.
Like they have to go
Right.
to someone else, because otherwise, and that's explicitly forbidden to stop this kind of abuse of your sacramental authority as a priest. And so he was automatically excommunicated, and within a month, the Jesuits lifted it. And they kept all this stuff very secret, very much under wraps, did very little to reach out to anyone or to see if there were any other women who'd been preyed upon and abused. And in the midst of all of this, someone high-ranking in the Vatican invited him while he's being investigated to come and speak to the Curia for a Lenten retreat. I mean, it just is unbelievably tone deaf would be the most charitable word to use here.
Yeah, it's so
But
far
just
beyond
to be
tone-deaf.
so indifferent to the suffering of so many women, it just really is stomach turning. And you just think, could this priest possibly believe in God? I mean, there's something just so deeply sociopathic about his behavior. And
Right. The same question you
Yeah,
asked
he was-
about the Cardinal McCarrick when he was cardinal, where you just thought, how can a person behave like this if they believe in God?
Can I offer a shot at answering that question?
Yeah.
The devil is. I would make a lousy devil, I think, because if I had people working for me, I'd throw them a bone every now and then. But instead, what the devil really loves to do is humiliate and degrade his own. So people will, and then at some point, the vanity, the narcissism will overtake the person, and he'll spend €500,000 that was money that was supposed to go to the poor to remodel his apartment or home. But by that point, his vanity, his narcissism, his pride, his understanding of himself, his distorted understanding of himself, the devil has just continued to encourage this to the point where the guy eventually is going to humiliate himself. Horribly, but the devil doesn't care.
No,
he
that's
actually
pleasant.
rejoices.
Yeah,
he
right.
rejoices in the humiliation of the people who have been serving him.
Yeah. Right.
It's a warning. It's a warning to all of us.
Yeah, but
Yes.
how are these people making it to the top positions in the church? That's what's bothering me. Like this priest who did these things and then is invited to give a retreat at the Vatican. I mean, I know people who could give a great retreat at the Vatican. They're not getting invited.
Cy Kellett.
No, I could. Yeah, it would be like the best retreat ever if I did it.
I'm imagining you trying to speak Italian and just like the embarrassing hand motions as you pantomime what you imagine man sounds like.
Right. I just put the letter O on the end of all my words. But
Yes.
do you see what I'm saying? Is like at a certain
Yeah, I
point,
do.
it's fair for the faithful to ask, how does this keep happening?
Right.
That these are not just there's
Yeah.
a bad priest somewhere here. This is at the highest levels. The second highest levels of the church, because I don't think that we have this have had this problem in recent decades or centuries, maybe even with popes, but people at very high levels in the church really misbehaving really, really badly.
Yep.
Yes.
In a very wicked way.
So tell me, Joe, how's it happen? You've been in Rome.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It's something that I think is something that
It's in the
I've
coffee.
grappled with myself. I mean, in the Father Rupnik case, he was basically kicked out of his community in Slovenia because of his behavior. and ended up going to Rome. You just think, like, that's not how you solve this. You don't just give the guy a raise to get him out of your hair. But I think there's a certain element of that, like make him somebody else's problem. And that's an alarming kind of trend. The other thing is, I mean, it's weird to say this, but in some ways, Italy is it's a city. And so rising through the ranks as a priest in one city is not actually as hard as it sounds. Like if you speak Italian, if you are charming and affable, which a lot of sociopaths are, it's actually not that difficult in the city of Rome, it seems, to get connected with very powerful people and to kind of rise through the ranks. And then I think on top of it all, it's hard to overstate, and I think people underestimate the sheer level of just incompetence within the Vatican. And I don't mean that as a moral judgment. I just mean like things don't run well at all. And the one example I'd use is I once received as a seminarian in Rome mail that was intended for the Secretariat of State. And I just thought, that's not a good sign. Like, shouldn't be confusing.
Was there 5 million in euros in the envelope, Si?
I didn't check. I could have really renovated my seminary room, and they would have probably caught on. Yeah. But it was. I went over and hand delivered it. It was just like.
Well, Joe,
you could ask in a lot of ways the same questions about Washington, right? Like at the end of the day, it's kind of a small town, and it's got a small town feel, and so everybody knows everybody, and you can get a lot further there than if you're at the other end of the world, trying your hardest to be a holy and faithful priest.
There's probably a lot of money involved too, though. I mean, money is very corrupting.
It is,
and there's a lot of money makes its way through Rome, and through the Vatican City. But having worked for the church for large parts of my life. It is a church of amateurs. People are priests because they the old meaning of the word amateur for the love of it, and it's not a church of professionals in most places. As much as we want to say, we have professional standards and all that, the only people who are in to doing these things are people who just do it for the love of it, and a lot of them are not that good at it. I mean, a lot of us are not that good at it.
I think it's very true. And I mean, this is one of the kind of constant problems is wanting to hold everyone to just just even having worldly wisdom. I would love it if everyone acted in a really holy way, but even if they just acted in a smart way, that'd be a good start.
Yeah, right.
Like these scandals are these incredible kind of own goals. Like you didn't have to do this. It would not have been hard to just say, hey, stop doing this. You can't be a priest anymore. Sorry. Bye. Yeah. That would not have been, I don't know how easy that is as a solution. That seems really easy. And yet we kind of bring these scandals upon ourselves. And so I don't know. There is that element. The amateurishness is, I think, a good insight. I always go back to the example of like go to almost any church website and you just think like, oh, like a company would never survive if this was the quality of what they were presenting to the public.
Have you ever noticed that you can go to a lot of church websites? There's only one piece of information anyone wants from a church website.
Yeah, mass and confession times.
And on a good 70% of parish websites, you can't figure it out.
No.
It's incredible.
And there's a button on there that says sacraments. So you go, well, at Mass, they're going to celebrate a sacrament. I'll click on that. It's got nothing to do with Mass times. It's got preparation for confirmation.
You about other sacraments. Yeah. It's incredible.
Why can we not just have a church website that tells you the stuff that the people in the church want to know? Instead of, obviously, clearly, the pastor's letter has to be the number one thing that just pops up. and you can. There's no problem finding that. But if I want to know what time to go to Mass, I got to be a computer genius on these.
Yes. I'll just say this for anyone who's listening who has anything to do with church websites. Here's the information we want: the parish name, address, phone number, Mass times,
and confession times.
Any special news and confession times.
Confession times.
And any special news for that week, like inclement weather, we're not having Mass today. There's a holiday. And so update that. It's one page. We do not need buttons. We do not need pictures from the parish picnic 8 years ago. We don't need any of stop all of that stuff. One page. I don't want to click on anything. I want to immediately have it, and that's it.
There is a solution to this, by the way, and it was put together by some professionals.
What's it?
Masstimes.org.
Oh yeah, that's good. Actually,
it will find you where you are. Yeah. Or you can put in your zip code, and you can filter by time of day, by sacrament.
Right.
So Mass or confession.
But I do think that Joe
Don't travel without
Joe's
it.
pointing to the parish website is a good point. You want to know the level that the church is operating on. Look at the standard that we have for our websites, and a lot of them would be a great website if it was 1995. They would be like,
some
wow,
of them would
that's
be a
like a
great website.
miracle of a good website
Right.
for 1995.
Look at the quality of the catechetical materials that are approved by the USCCB or published by the USCCB compared to the sorts of things that so for example, Catholic Answers or Augustine Institute or Sophia Institute Press.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
You're
I
right
was going to say,
about that.
in terms of church websites, as bad as American ones are, Italian ones are somehow worse, where they just won't have the Mass times anywhere at all. It's not like you have to go looking for they just don't exist. And sometimes when you go to the web pages, music will randomly start playing and you don't know where it's coming from or how to turn it off.
Yeah.
And it's just like this terrible like MIDI music that the kind of what you'd find on a web page in the late 90s. It's astonishing. It really is.
I have to say, too, though, that we who work in either church ministry directly for the church, which I have done but no longer do, or work indirectly, in apostolates like this, there is always the temptation to think, I'm doing this for Jesus, therefore I really don't have to do a very good job on it. I don't know why we have that psychology, but we don't have the... like, what's the guy that invented Apple Computer? And he always used to say,
Steve Jobs?
Make it insanely great, right? You would think we would say, I'm doing this for Jesus. I got to make this insanely great. But what we actually say is, I'm doing this for Jesus. Maybe it's because we think, well, he'll understand if I really put half effort into this.
There's a kind of a mediocrity in a lot of this. Not so much now. I think architecture has taken a turn from the really bad.
I think our architecture is definitely getting better in churches. Without question.
But I mean, the post-conciliar period up through the 80s was a horrible time for architecture, and
even before that, like 50s churches tend to be pretty ugly.
They tend to be cruciform, I guess,
there's quite a few towns in San Diego County where the ugliest building in the town is the Catholic Church.
El Cajon,
and is El Cajon one of those? Oh, I know the church you're talking about.
It's my parish.
It's a lovely community, but
it is great, Pastor.
That's not how you use concrete.
No,
that is not. How
well,
you
if
use
you're
concrete.
building a bomb shelter,
yeah, right. Corbusier. You would love it. If you want to get in the conversation, 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. We're wearing flannel because it's the flannel panel, and I felt so touched this morning that Jordan, the newest employee here, wore flannel to support us, knowing that we were going to do the flannel panel. Jordan, thanks for wearing the flannel and supporting us.
Of course. Is my mic on?
Yeah, your mic's on.
It
Yeah,
is.
her headphones don't work. Because if it's worth it, we're doing it for Jesus.
Can I
so
just
we don't need to make the
say,
headphones
if
work.
people would just go to givecatholic.com right now, then we could buy a set of headphones for Jordan.
Well, we was
This is true. This is true.
Jordan is in our development department. Maybe you were the one who should have said that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So how long have you been here at Catholic Answers? It's just a matter of weeks now.
2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks.
Yeah, I'm brand new.
And how are you finding it? Is it okay?
I'm loving it.
Okay.
This is the place to be.
It is.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be here.
And what do you think of our standards? We were just talking about mediocrity in the Catholic Church.
I mean, I definitely think that our website sets the bar. It's a little better than some of the parish websites. I agree with you. They could be better. The sacrament tab always gets me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But when you come into work, you see me working an 8-hour day every day.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Sai,
Yeah,
you work the hardest out of
everybody. That's what I
everybody.
wanted to hear.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back. Thanks for wearing the flannel to support
Thanks
us.
for having me.
I appreciate that. I want to get on the conversation. 888-318-7884. More news of the world from a Catholic perspective with the flannel panel right after this.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization Online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Bill Coleman back to Catholic Answers Live. It's the Flannel Panel. Joe Heschmeyer, our guest. Chris Check, our guest. I'm Cy Kelly, your host. And we're doing the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. And got a little depressing there for a minute, but we'll try to bring that up by talking about American politics in a minute. That always cheers everybody up. But Jordan.
Yes.
How many segments are you staying for?
No,
I'm just mad at you right now because they gave you one of my cameras, and
which one do I
It's
look
hard
at?
for me to do the show without 3 cameras on me. But yeah, that one, they got that one on you.
Hey.
There's Jordan.
Cy, as you know, when we bring a new team member here at Catholic Answers, bring on a new team member here at Catholic Answers, I visit with them.
Yeah.
I trust David Matheson's judgment that Jordan will be good at raising money for Catholic Answers, and I think it's a great gift and opportunity to be able to do that work, to support the good work that we do. But for my part, I want to get to know this new soul who's going to be working with us, and really find out how much, insofar as I can, and it reveals itself over time, but how much they love Jesus.
Yeah.
And Jordan's a young lady. I mean, I know you're not supposed to ask a woman her age, but you're just like fresh out of college. Like
I'm a little past college.
Yeah, not much.
5 years.
Okay, so that gives you...
The older you get, the more that is just out of college. Like
You're right. I'm just a little younger than you, Cy.
That wasn't with Jordan. I already like her a lot.
So very mature young lady, and with a serious interior life. And I was very, very struck by a number of things that Jordan said when we were talking, but in particular, her devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and to which you have a very, very, very deep devotion. And I'll just say I was very moved by our conversation. And I said, this is exactly the person we want here at Catholic Answers. So very grateful to have her.
Thank you, Chris.
We're glad you're here. So,
Very happy to be here.
Raise some money, though. Let's hear how you do it. Raise some money.
Right now?
Yeah, raise some money. Come on.
All right. So Chris just said we needed everybody to go to give/catholic.com.
No. GiveCatholic.com.
I'm already messing it up. I'm brand new. Everybody give me a little break.
Yeah.
Because we need new headphones, but now they're working. And so that looks a little hypocritical, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't still go to the website.
But how long will they
and
work
give.
for, Jordan? There's no guarantees with
You're right.
these
They could
old
go out at
raggedy
any
headphones
moment.
we got.
I think
That's right.
Catholic Answers is looking for a new Christmas present, new headphones.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And this is a giving time of year, right? People
And
give
those
at the end of the
headphones
year.
cost about $250,000 each, right? You forgot to add the...
We're looking for
We're getting some good headphones.
4 new headphones would be great.
Right.
There we go.
So one pair of headphones will do one Cardinals apartment, half of one Cardinals apartment?
Exactly.
Okay.
Wow. Right.
Sorry. All right, we're going to move on. I'm going to segue. This is one thing.
Can I just say that, Chris is officially better than the devil in terms of managerial styles.
He is. He's definitely better than the devil. Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to be too
I
flattering.
agree with that. He's a better manager than the devil. That's very well said, Joe. We set a high standard.
Can I
around
put that
it.
on my LinkedIn page?
Yeah. And then put in quote marks with Joe Heschmeyer.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys about the Pope's resignation letter. Did you know that the Pope signed a resignation letter? How did you feel
When
about
you
this?
sent me that, I want to just tell everyone listening, Cy sends me an email that has one line that says, we should talk about the Pope's resignation letter. And I had not heard anything about this, and that is kind of an alarming one-sentence email.
Oh, sorry about
And
that,
then
Joe. I didn't think that through.
Oh, no, you're just like, yeah. You hear about the Pope's resignation letter? Well, just to, if anyone is having a heart attack on the road, he did not resign. He had a resignation letter prepared for when he was then getting some medical stuff done in 2013, I believe. That is in the hands of his number 2 or number 3 guy. just in case he ever became incapacitated. And I think there was a similar thing that Pius XII did when Hitler was kind of at the door.
Oh, Pius
and he
XII
wasn't
did,
sure-
yes.
Yeah, and so it's not unheard of, although it's very rare for us to kind of hear of it publicly, of a pope having that kind of exigency plan.
Well, the person that he said it to said, "Well, do you want this to be known publicly?" And the Pope's response was, "That's why I'm saying it," which I thought was that's pretty. That's interview 101. But why though?
Well, I don't know if
mean,
you've seen any other interviews he's done.
Yeah, you never know what he's going to say, I guess. Yeah, he is a wild interviewer.
Sometimes it just seems like he says it and then afterwards decides, like, well, should I have said it quite like that?
Well,
which I do the same. I don't mean that as a.
Also,
really
maybe
sharp
that's the wrong
critic.
question to ask. Why the Pope would say it publicly now? Maybe it's just it comes up and he says it. It does. He does seem sometimes to be a person who I was thinking of it, so I said it.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it. I think, people have been predicting the Pope's resignation for almost his entire pontificate, and they've been wrong every time.
Well, wait a second now. Let's not blame people for that. He said when he came a few years, and then
I'm going to go get a pizza.
No, he just.
That is what he said.
I didn't know that's
he
what he said.
He regretted that he couldn't just walk into town and get a pizza, something like that.
So,
Somebody asked him about, resigning. He said, well, it'd be nice to be able to just walk into town and get a pizza.
So probably some of the speculation on his resignation comes from the fact that he's a controversial pope in many circles. So, you're not going to like somebody who's just like, I don't know, doesn't generate that kind of controversy is not going to have the people attending to it in quite the, well, when's he going to resign? Right. But also he has said things that make you think, well, he's not.
True.
He keeps saying like, a few years. And
I'm not. I'm just telling people don't panic. Don't get your hopes up. However you'd respond to that.
Hopes up.
I wouldn't put in a lot of eggs in the basket of a resignation one way or the other.
Yeah.
Should I provide like a similar letter, Cy? I give it to you if I ever just demonstrate incompetence or cowardice.
I'm not sure if you want Cy being the one judging if you.
Quiet, Joe. Quiet. Take Joe's microphone down. Yes, you should give that letter to me.
Keep that.
You should put it in
drawer.
my hands.
Yeah.
Yes. Just leave the date blank, and I can date it
Right,
whenever I want. Yeah. Don't give it to Siobhan because she is trying to take your job. She wants you out of here. The number's 888.
Boy, talk about somebody who's a better manager than the devil.
Yeah, Siobhan's great. We have had a lot of. She came this year, right?
Yeah.
This is. We've had a very good year for hires.
Yes.
For Catholic Answers, way better than last year.
He sends us good people. God sends us good people.
Yeah. Did you hear what I said, Joe? Way better than last year.
I get it now. Last year was definitely in terms of quantity. I'll give you that.
Right. Because a lot of people have left and new people have come. And all right, so that's it on the Pope's resignation letter. Because I'm going to move on unless you guys got anything else on the Pope's resignation letter. I do think it's a good idea. I think he should do it because really the church could get stuck, especially with like the machines that people get put on when at the end of life nowadays. The church could get stuck without a pope for a long time if that wasn't.
It's a weird thing to have kind of like a papal advance directive, but it kind of
it makes sense.
I mean, because we are in a situation, I guess, we're in a situation where lifespan is longer than ever before in human history by a good chunk. And so popes are alive, and the prospect of a pope having serious mental deterioration or being in a vegetative state or any number of other kind of situations where he can't do the job of governance well.
Can I say there's a little incongruity here. When you're a bishop, you have to resign at 75.
Yeah.
And if you're on the College of Cardinals at 80, you may no longer vote. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet you can hold the office of a job that carries with it a great deal more responsibility than the first two that I mentioned until death. Now, I get that. And
there's no way to change the legislation on that because the Pope is the legislator.
I'm not saying. Listen, I'm just saying maybe there ought to be more latitude. For example, I hope I can make competent decisions when I'm 75 or even 80.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to have,
as unlikely as that may sound,
a common practice in the church that okay, if you make it to, I don't know, 90. That you resign, and that would give.
Or maybe it should be more fluid based on the circumstances. Who knows?
I didn't do American politics because I didn't feel we had time, but there's some important stuff to talk about what's going on here in the United States. The Flannel Panel, uniquely unqualified to talk about American politics, but we could talk about the moral side of it, not the political side or the sociological side, but we'll get into the morals of some of what's going on in politics as we continue with the Flannel Panel right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. A very blessed Advent to you and all of yours. I hope it has been proceeding in a fashion that can be called blessed. I'm sure there's plenty of blessings there. I guess the question is always, have we availed ourselves of them? And even if you haven't, Christmas is coming. Jesus
You had an extra week this year.
Do we have an extra week of Advent?
It's great. Yeah.
Basically, I mean, this is as long as Advent ever gets.
Father Hugh used to get so mad when Advent was short.
Yeah,
I hate it. Well, okay, but I don't know. Can we have a shorter Lent? That's the one that I want shorter. I do not have the spiritual stamina for Lent, which is maybe why I need Lent. But I don't know about this 40 days thing.
You need all 40 of those days.
I would like Lent to be maybe a day and a half of giving stuff up. And
I don't know if it's any consolation, but this year Easter is actually going to be on a Sunday.
Knock it off, Joe. Knock it off. It's not funny, dude. I'm not falling for this. Actually, Christmas is on a Sunday, too. Just got to do a little bit of housekeeping before we continue. Flannel Panel is where we talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. Zach, don't do that again. Gave me a heart attack before the show. I didn't know if you were coming back. I thought you were gone. I thought you had left us. Oh, no, I'm just playing with you, Zach. Now don't. He looks all serious
he's not.
now.
You turned the board live about 5 seconds before we came on.
Like it's okay if the host sits down 5 seconds, but if the board op does, everyone's scared. You scared me, Zach.
I really needed water.
Oh, you needed water. All right. Okay. Well, that's important. Yeah. We don't want a
So
poorly
if I could-
hydrated board op. Yep. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for people wanting a blessed Advent, it's not too late to start.
No.
And a really good way is to do the O antiphon. So you can just look up O antiphons, which are the final days before Christmas, and it's really simple. So we've been doing a prayer, a relevant Bible verse. If you don't have a relevant Bible verse, you can skip that part. And then the relevant stanza from O Come, Emmanuel, because all of the stanzas, or like all of the verses from O Come, Emmanuel, are from one of the different O antiphons. So they're. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, if you're in the habit of praying Vespers, which is a practice that we do here at Catholic Answers, and one that I recommend to everyone, and thank our dear friend Father Hugh for bringing to us a number of years ago. Right now, you will say the O antiphons. They're right there in the Vespers, right before the Magnificat.
I know. I think, especially in the modern world where there's so many demands on people, I see this with young Catholic parents. Like, I blew it for Advent. You fed your children. You kept going. You didn't blow it for Advent. Relax. Jesus loves you. It's going to be okay.
The nice thing about Advent with little kids, it's fire. What we've been doing is we light the Advent candles. And I've got, again, a 1 and 3-year-old. They love the fire because we do that. We do some prayers, and then they get to blow the candles out, and then they compete to see who can blow out more candles. The only downside so far is my daughter's hair caught on fire one time. But other than that, it's been great.
Joe, if your children get lit on fire, it's not a minor downside. Don't say that like it's no big deal. One of my children went up in flames, but that's the only drawback.
Briefly. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Once an Advent is not a lot to get your hair caught on fire.
No, I guess not. If you want to get in on the conversation, 888-318-7884. And I don't know how to talk about the next topic without talking about Joe Biden. And I don't want to do so in a way that is political, but just moral. Because I heard the story told on National Public Radio, and I chose not to use the audio because it just really wasn't that interesting in audio, as much as I love to use National Public Radio audio. But it was a kind of a celebration or a reflection on how Joe Biden advanced morally to the point where he signed the marriage bill that just passed the House and the Senate, and did so, forcefully defending the equality of marriage and gay marriage.
In fact, that's what it's called, right? The Marriage Equality Act.
Marriage Equality Act, right. But I was struck by they played this audio from earlier Joe Biden, and then they played audio from later Joe Biden. And I'm not picking on President Biden. It's just that the country and lots of our fellow Christians, Catholics, made the exact same transition at the exact same time, where people were like, no, of course it's not equal, and I'm not for marriage, but for civil unions, or whatever people were saying. And then the Supreme Court changed its mind, and then the entire country, as far as any moral objection it had to making an equivalency between gay marriage and marriage, it just collapsed. So I want this new bill is in many ways morally offensive, but it's very hard to talk to anybody about the moral offense. The people just don't want to hear it. They don't. They see that as bigotry. They've decided it's bigotry, and they don't want to hear about that. That this is a morally offensive thing to do, to equate the marriage of a man and woman to any other union of which human beings are capable.
I think there is some conversation to be had, and it begins with our talking to other Christians. And Christians have, and by other Christians, I mean Christians other than ourselves. I don't mean non-Catholic Christians, because Catholics have a lot of culpability here as well. Boy, I could talk for an hour on this thing, but a couple of observations. One is so much of this spins on how cleverly the enemy uses words. So calling this thing the Marriage Equality Act is just an offense against language. But when the three of us are in a concentration camp somewhere, it will be because, of the enforcement of the Freedom from Religion Act or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, there's going to be a Freedom of Religion Act, which means that anyone has, because this is the next step in this, by the way, anyone has access to the sacraments of the Catholic Church. So that's going to be the Freedom of Religion Act.
Do you think so?
Oh, it is definitely coming. It's now how the Church reacts to it, of course, we can have some speculation about, and what we hope individual men and women will do. But to the point of saying something to Christians, this battle is this current defeat in this long-going battle is not a surprise, and it is it is exactly what we could have expected to happen, going back to let's start with the Enlightenment, but really making manifestation in the Revolution in France, where divorce is made into a sacrament, and even in the 19th century in this country, divorce is not especially difficult to come by. And then you throw contraception into the mix, which also is an enemy of marriage, and then beginning in the state of California, no-fault divorce. Add into that all the jolly and lighthearted representation of alternate lifestyles on situation comedies, first subtly and now not subtly at all. This is a cultural battle that has been going on for a long time. And the error that Catholics and other Christians have made is they have fought this battle in the political realm and to a degree in the cultural realm when it is a moral question. And it has to do with what marriage is. And we use, as we do in the pro-life movement, sort of the language of civil rights. There is no right to marry. There isn't a right to marry. We need to begin first by understanding what marriage is and what it's for. It's for the organ, and prior to Jesus making it a sacrament, it is for the organization of the sexual drive, for the rearing of children, for the uniting of families, and for the management of the inheritance of property. It wasn't even a matter for the state until well into the modern period. And insofar it was a matter for the state, it was for this question of who is going to inherit property. And yet now, beginning with so-called conservatives and Republicans, I'm sorry I'm getting my high horse here, Cy, because there's something to say. Beginning with Republicans, we had this whole Defense of Marriage Act where we're going to define marriage. We're going to say what it is. The state has no business defining what marriage is. So this is the natural, if you will, if I can use that word, progression of error that has been underway for several centuries.
Let me just before
So
Joe, I'm going to let you. Joe,
I
just want to ask a question before I let you do that. What do you mean there's no right to marry? Because there's a certain way in which, of course, there's a right to marry. That is,
there's not a civil right to marry. I mean,
I think there is.
The church. I don't understand what you're saying when you say there's not.
Because the family is prior to the state.
Well, that certainly is true. And of course, marriage is necessary to civilization. But even the church puts restrictions on who can marry.
Oh, so you're saying there's not
Or,
there's
actually,
not an absolute
especially
right to
the church.
marry.
It's not total license.
There's not right, but you have to say there's a
meaning,
right
like,
to marry. Like
if-
a state, like say the Chinese communists, they can't come in and say you don't get to marry.
Okay.
Or they can't come in and say you only get to have one child if you are married. If they do those things, they are committing grave sins against the family.
I think this is the problem of using the language of civil rights in a moral and anthropological question. And so, no, of course not. The state has no authority to say who may or may not marry. The church, after she becomes involved, when our Lord makes it a sacrament, and then the church eventually and mostly in the Middle Ages begins to organize this natural human institution, the church absolutely has business saying who may and may not marry. It is, but the state, this is not a matter for the state. The definition of marriage and the regulation of marriage is not a matter for the state.
No, it would be as if to say that
I would push back. I know this is maybe a strange position, but I think that it is, and I think there's a reason the state has been involved and why the church has happily cooperated with the state, even corrupt states, in marriage. And the reason actually has to do with what you said before, that marriage at its heart is about families. It's about children. And so if you think about just the biological need, when infants are born, they're born incredibly needy. And if they're going to survive, they need adult supervision. If they're going to thrive, they could really, really use their mother and father. They can get by without that situation, but every metric we have suggests that's going to be a worse outcome most of the time. And so given that, both the church and the state have an interest in encouraging the biological mother and father to stick around in a stable union that can provide a home for future citizens, for, however you want to understand it. So there are all sorts of downstream consequences that we're dealing with socially because of the breakdown of marriage. So in that sense, the state has a tremendous interest in seeing that marriage thrive. What it doesn't have an interest in is in romance. In other words, if you redefine marriage to just be, well, Tommy and Jim love each other very much, so therefore we're going to call them married, the state has no reason to be involved in that. If marriage is about family, if it's about kids, then by all means, the state can be there, it can encourage it, it can regulate it, it can make sure it's not easy to run out on your wife, it can do all those things to make it more stable of an environment for kids. And
but it can't define it. I think one of the things Chris is saying is the state has no business defining it.
Contrary to reason. But I mean, historically, there were certain parameters the state had. You couldn't marry a close relative. It had to be opposite sex. And all of those parameters were in accordance with natural law. Well, the problem now is that the parameters the government is trying to create are inventions that are contrary to natural law. They can't redefine it in opposition to nature. In the same way that, killing is a moral issue. It's also properly a civil issue. But if the state said, now we think killing's okay, well, they wouldn't be acting appropriately because civil law can't trump natural law. You can't have a law that mandates or encourages an injustice.
We can agree here. I think I have a lot of difficulty talking about a human activity that's been going on historically that is something that manifests itself in the everyday practice of human persons, and we find it in the historical and the anthropological record. And for most of that time, for the majority of that time, insofar as it was regulated by the extended families that were being, by the way, themselves united in the marriage. In the modern state right now, I'll concede that there is reason for the church to cooperate, provided that the church has the say of what marriage is. That's not the business of the state. But now, when we have a state that is so obviously an anti-Christian state, as we do now, run by anti-Christians, including our president, who describes himself as a Christian, and he's a baptized Catholic, I get that, but all of his legislation in the moral realm is anti-Christian. And so he has no authority whatsoever to say what marriage is and, by extension, regulate it.
We do have to take a break.
Martin Luther King says an unjust law is no law at all. And he's quoting Aquinas is quoting Augustine. So there is a long-standing tradition that when the state says this immoral thing is moral, we just say you don't have the capacity to say that.
And here's the problem that I want to address when we come back, that there's a reluctance to talk about the morality of the acts that are committed within gay relationships and straight relationships, to use the jargon of our era. But we cannot explain to people or ask people to take any interest in our position about the definition of marriage if we don't talk about sexual acts. But I'm gonna leave that there.
It is for the regulation of sexuality. That's what marriage is for.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back, right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features daily Mass, prayers, articles, and meditations in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church. On the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN has its own official YouTube channel with tens of thousands of videos covering just about every conceivable topic of interest to Catholics. And, best of all, it's free. Every day, EWTN adds new TV shows, live events, devotionals, homilies, and specials to its YouTube channel. Visit the EWTN YouTube channel today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. We're talking about the new marriage bill that was passed by the United States Congress and signed by the President of the United States, quite in a quite celebratory fashion. There's one part of the bill that I am 100% for, but I believe it was included in the bill only for propaganda reasons, and I would like to mention that it is now federal law that every state must recognize interracial marriage. This is a fact.
Finally, that was a looming threat.
I'm glad we settled that.
All right, okay, I'm sorry. I have to be the guy that says that is not the business of the federal government. Listen,
marriage is not the business of the federal government under the American system. That's always been the case. Marriage is not in the Constitution. Marriage is it's state law, not federal law. But that ship has sailed, Chris.
I am in favor of interracial marriages. I think that's great if you fall in love with and can start a family with some of another race. That is good. That is, and the Church says as much.
It is good.
It
right.
is. This is.
I'm worried about where the rest of this sentence is going.
Well, I know the word "but" is going to really change this whole tenor of this.
One, it is what Cy said. It is pure propaganda. And by the way, I react badly to that line being in there because it now equates interracial marriage with so-called gay marriage, which it is not. Which it is not.
Right, because the moral calculus of interracial marriage.
That is morally offensive and is personally offensive to men and women of different races who are marrying each other.
Right, like Moses and his wife.
Yeah.
But
the other thing is it's just not the business of the federal government.
Say it again, Joe.
Start passing pro-life bills that include like Section 1, outlaws abortion, Section 2, you can't murder toddlers. And then be like, okay, go ahead, vote against the Don't Murder Toddlers and Unborn Babies bill.
Right. And maybe we should do that. I don't know, because maybe propaganda is the way you get things done. I don't know. But it clearly is an act of propaganda that it was included. I mean, if you had just said, here's a bill to say that interracial marriage is permitted everywhere at all times in American states and territories, you would have had 100% on both sides of it. Nobody would have.
Yes.
So this is all a pretense that this is what we're doing. We're cleaning up some business that has not been well attended to previously. That's not what's happening. But I do want to talk about sex for a minute. And so I will warn the parents that's what we're going to talk about, because we got to talk about it. That the people will say, well, so you think the love between you and your wife is not equal to the love between me and my partner? And the answer is, it depends entirely on what you mean by love. But
equal.
What do you mean by it?
Well, didn't you say is not equal to the love that I have between me and my partner? Yeah.
Right.
But it isn't. It's not the same thing.
Well, what I would say is, quite bluntly, the sex is not equal. Because one of them is the way that the human race is propagated, and the other way is the misuse of the human body. There's no other way to talk about that and get to the point at what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
The two bodies
the way I
go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, the way I present it, because this is something people for some reason really struggle with. If I say, what are your lungs for? What's your respiratory system for?
Right.
People will be like, oh yeah, obviously breathing. What's your digestive system for? Oh, digesting. I'm like, what's your reproductive system for? They're like, well, who can say?
Oh yeah, it's a mystery, right?
It's pleasure. And it's like, well, no, once you realize the reproductive system has something to do with reproduction, and you only have half of one, it's the only system in the body, it's incomplete, and you need a member of the opposite sex to have a fully functional reproductive system. That's all we're saying. Like, we are not just saying, hey, Leviticus says don't do gay stuff. That is not the argument. The argument is at the level of nature that what marriage is and what reproduction are inherently between a man and woman, and no government has the power to change that because these are biological realities. And so
and
even if you're in a
anthropological realities
Yes,
and social
absolutely.
realities that have to be regulated.
So like ancient Greece, they had all sorts of like homosexual man-boy, man-teenager, man-man kind of stuff that they not only permitted, they really valorized.
Yeah.
But marriage is still between a man and a woman. And you can't just say that was homophobia because they weren't
homophobic.
They just understood something so basic that they didn't need a Bible verse to get it. And so I will say this, one of the ways I think we've hindered ourselves is too often we make these cases from divine revelation. We make these cases from, well, here it says in the Bible. And so as you get a country that's less and less Christian, and as you get a country in which Christians don't feel comfortable legislating based on their Christian convictions, then they say, well, I get what marriage is about, but I can't legislate that, so I've got to vote for gay marriage. Yeah. And instead, we need to say, look, this is against nature. This is something that a pagan had no right not to know, and it's only in the last 50 years we've gotten dumb enough as a culture that we suddenly don't remember what marriage or sex is about.
Something on the order of 80 Catholics voted for this act.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me at all because I do think, I mean, as much as we can
80
have this
Republican Catholics,
the three of us can have this conversation and say whatever we want and use up all the oxygen in the room. But the truth is the objection to same-sex marriage has evaporated. There's no one who's running on it. There's no one who's discussing it. It has evaporated.
And my friends,
we lost.
There are prelates in the church right now. I don't know who is the Belgian bishop or various German bishops who are pushing this. And of course, they're saying, "Oh, right. Well, no, marriage that specifically has a theological term, but we have to find some way to bless the unions of these lifelong friendships." So even within the church, this language creep of what a word means, like Alice and Humpty Dumpty having the conversation, it doesn't matter what the word means. It means what the man in power says it means. The church is going to have to face this reality in my lifetime, which is not much less, really, in terms of human history. But what happens when the government of the United States tells Catholic priests, you have to witness or bless this union? That is coming. That's coming.
But even before it comes, though, Chris, I mean, the accommodations that people are willing to make even now are ridiculously small. I mean,
churchmen.
If you're a priest or if you're a church or, then fine, you don't have to go along. But everybody else in every other circumstance must go along. This is the equivalent of being a racist if you don't go along with this. And let me tell you, it's not the equivalent of being a racist. It's not. That's not what that's an insult to. Well, I just think that's a tremendous insult to those who fought for the logic that racism is just stupid and immoral. Objection to homosexual sex being valorized is not stupid and immoral.
Let's explore that connection a little more if we could. Like a lot of the times this comes up with make the cake, that kind of argument. Like, oh, okay, this wedding cake maker, you're saying they have to make a cake celebrating a same-sex marriage, and if they don't, therefore they're homophobic and they're bigots, and this should be not just morally frowned upon, but it should actually be illegal where they can be punished by the government for not cooperating and celebrating a gay marriage. This is stunning given that, when they were trying to get their foot in the door, it was just like, oh, no, we just want civil unions.
Yeah, we don't want anything
we just
from
want
you.
marriage, but if you don't like gay marriage, don't worry about it. It's like it just keeps going further and further, which is why I think Chris is right. Like the European prelates who are saying just a little bit here in the church, We know what this is.
That's not.
It doesn't stop there.
No, of course it doesn't.
But let's go back to the cake. Oh,
go ahead.
Real quick.
No,
if I say I want a cake and I want it to be white power, and a cake maker says, "I'm not making you a white power, white supremacist cake," that is not discrimination against me on the basis of race. That is that is discrimination against an idea, which is totally legitimate and moral and appropriate. You shouldn't have to endorse an idea that's repugnant. And the fact that the powers that be don't find gay marriage immoral, that's a them problem, and they can't legally impose that on cake makers or citizens of
But they will. They will. We'll be right back with more of the Flannel Panel, talking about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective on Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Joe Heschmeyer, our guest. Chris Check, our guest. This is the Flannel Panel. Flannel Panel is when we get together and talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. We're talking about what's in the United States called the Respect for Marriage Act. Is that Respect for Marriage?
Yeah, Respect for Marriage Act.
Respect for Marriage Act, which enshrines, which insists upon.
That is so obscene in its wording.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I
intentionally so.
Yes,
they're,
of course.
They're trying to be.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Like,
we troll each other. That's what we do now. Who supported it?
Yeah, true. Bob Barr, the guy who was the original sponsor of the Defense of Marriage Act.
Totally believe it. Completely
totally
believe it.
Did he?
Yep.
Yeah, because, I mean, there is, in America, there's a strong libertarian thing, and I know that many Catholics are attracted to the libertarian thing, but just try to square that with Catholic social teaching. You can't do it. And the idea that marriage is just a contract, I guess, it's just a contract that people enter into whatever contract they want. Here's another problem that we don't talk about: the instance of straight men being willing to marry statistically goes down in every society that legalizes gay marriage. What is that about? What
is that about?
Because there's an argument when people were arguing for gay marriage here in the United States where they would say, "What, is marriage so fragile that your marriage can't take it if I can get married?" And I believe the answer is yes. Marriage is that fragile, and sometimes things that are precious are fragile. It doesn't have anything to do with its value to say that it is fragile. And if you start messing with it, you may shift something that's of such core value that that you don't know the consequences of it.
I think so. Obviously these things are correlated. But if I'm going to try to suggest a chicken and egg thing here, it's the one that precedes the other. Christians have given up on marriage. They've given up on marriage. So we were just trying to gather I speculated that the average marriage is something like 7 or 8 years right now.
Yeah.
And somebody can look up that data.
No,
I guess,
it
Zach
looks
looked it up.
like
That's what he
that's right.
said. It is 7 or 8 years.
So that's not marriage.
No.
That isn't marriage. Marriage is a permanent bond that ends with death.
Yeah.
That's what marriage is.
Right.
You can't change. You cannot.
Not always murder, but always ends with death.
You cannot change this definition. So Christians, Catholics included, the way that we range from participating in divorce ourselves, or we have a friend who can I say this? This law, what do we call it? Respect for Marriage Act, or whatever. You and I are not going to change that. Joe's not. None of the people listening to it. This is not going to be changed. What we can change is our own attitude, our own understanding of what marriage is, and then how we live that our own lives, first of all, by staying married to our spouses.
Right.
One. So I just want to encourage everyone who's listening.
And not abandoning our children.
Yes.
I mean, that's
stay
part
married.
of what divorce is
and guess
in many
what?
cases.
Guess what? I know marriage is hard. It's been harder for Jackie than it has been for me, but it is difficult. If your marriage is struggling right now, get a hold of our friends, the Alexanders there in San Antonio, Alexander House. This was a couple that found out on the same day that they were each cheating on each other, and they saved their marriage.
God bless them.
Yeah. So
It's like the Pina Colada song.
Right. Well, I'm sure the Alexanders, if they heard this,
make levity of that.
No, but they're doing great work. Or Retrovile, or whatever it's called, or something.
Yeah,
but
I was trying to remember the name of it. I knew it wasn't Ratatouille.
So
I was
right. Okay, 2 for 2 there, Joe. Great.
So, sorry, I'm
Pot him
struggling
down.
here.
With the bad
Pot
jokes.
him down.
Yeah. So first of all, and then by the way, if there's someone in your immediate family or in your friend group, and they're saying, "Boy, my marriage is hard," that's your chance to say, "Hey, how can I help you? How can I help you restore the love in your marriage?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's stick this out, because divorce is not an option.
No, it's not. It's not. And I don't know.
Christians, stop pretending divorce is an option. It's not. Divorce is bad.
And I have to say, Catholic parents used to be bold about teaching this, and I don't know. Like you said, we gave up. We stopped teaching this to our kids, and there's a glory in marriage when it is undertaken in that spirit. That this is the surrender of the self to this union, without the idea of I got an escape hatch if it don't work out. That's not the case. And it also, I think when you say that, Chris, it gives us the opportunity to say, because it really should be said, as much as this gay marriage bill or this respect for marriage bill is morally offensive, it's certainly not gay people who ruin marriage. It's not. It has nothing to do with gay people. It has to do with all of us, what we did for whatever reason throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. We worked our way into a situation where we're failing at marriage now.
Yeah. Whether we let contraception into the marriage, or we consider divorce as an option, or just the time when you didn't hold your tongue, when it would have been very easy just to hold your tongue.
Yeah, right. Don't say that thing. Right. And also, we've put too much pressure on marriage in the sense that people are more and more isolated socially. There's no men's clubs anymore. There's no women's clubs anymore. The marriage is the primary friendship all the time. And you know what? There's sometimes where your marriage can't be your primary friendship. It can always be your primary relationship, but sometimes you need to have other interests, other ways of meeting the needs of friendship, because that's asking too much of marriage to make it basically the entirety of life depends on this relationship. As a matter of fact, many married people are not friends for long periods of their married life. That's okay too. But we've destroyed all these other outlets where people could have friends, where people could have social life, and the burden on marriage to be perfect is overwhelming. It cannot do that job. It's not going to do it for you. It's not going to do it for me. It can't do that job.
I think that's well said. I think maybe just to piggyback on something Chris had said, the lows seem just inescapably low in the midst of them. And so it's worth hearing the stories of people who are happily married now, who maybe went through some really rocky periods at other points in their marriage. And so in a way, it's a little bit like the crisis of teen suicide, is that when you're first starting out at a thing, whether that's adulthood or, real life or marriage, and things are going really badly, you just think, oh, I've ruined this thing. It's beyond repair. But if you stick with it, I think a lot of people who feel very suicidal when they're 16, 17, 18 are perfectly happy later in life. And I think a lot of marriages that look like they're headed for divorce in year 5, 6, 7, 8
that's right,
end up
Joe.
thriving.
That's right.
And so the stat for Chris, the average length of a marriage that ends in divorce is 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And so if you can make it through that, your odds actually improve. So you can kind of see this is where the going gets really tough. You probably have a mortgage and kids and a bunch of other responsibilities, but as things kind of calm down, maybe you reconnect, you forgive each other, you grow.
Something my wife and I say to each other, because we did have those, really bad, at least a decade together, where it was very hard to stay married, but we stuck it out. And one of the things that we kind of say to each other now is like, it's good if your second marriage happens within marriage. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you have the first marriage and then you go through this long dry period. Not everyone does, but we did, of where it was really, really hard for year after year after year. And then we rediscovered the joy of marriage, but it was to each other. We didn't go somewhere else. And I really feel like, I'm not saying that as a brag. I'm saying that that I think a lot of people are missing out on the best kind of second marriage, which is the person you married in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think it's just something that people don't appreciate because it's very easy to quit when the going gets tough. And I don't think it's just because people are quitters. I think it's also because they feel like they've ruined something beyond repair or they feel very hopeless in it. And there may be some really serious problems that need addressing, but it's amazing how many of those problems can be worked out, or in many cases will somewhat resolve with just age and maturation and everything else.
Indeed, they will. All right. Well, when we come back, I do want to.
Can I give
conclude this segment?
Give the great advice from Ogden Nash?
Yes.
About marriage, to keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up.
Ogden Nash, the highest paid poet in America at one time.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk about some more news of the world from a Catholic perspective.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Coverage as seen through a Catholic lens.
All people of faith and sincerity need to awaken to this and protect this fundamental right of religious liberty.
Expert analysis.
Does Revelation judge history, or does history judge Revelation?
Stories vital to people of faith.
It's part of our faith that comedy and tragedy naturally go hand in hand.
Delivered to your inbox every week. Sign up today. Go to EWTN.com/worldover.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Chris Check is our guest. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest. It's the flannel panel. We're all wearing flannel. We finally got that part of the flannel panel down. I do want to get to another story. That
but before we do that, can I respond to a comment from the Facebook thread? During the breaks, I like to check to see what people are saying on Facebook. And we were just talking about marriage. And Suzanne Bloomer, who is a saintly woman, I believe John Sorensen's mother-in-law, said, every single marriage goes through that, Joe. The best is yet to come. 52 years and going strong. Which,
all right,
amen.
Suzanne.
What a
Praise
beautiful
God.
witness.
Yeah,
I just
right.
want to be clear. I've only been married for like 4 years. Like the worst is yet to come for us. Like we haven't even gotten to that yet.
When your
Like,
wife
we're
discovers the truth.
We're still coasting on the honeymoon
Yeah.
fumes. And
Right.
It's going to get a lot worse.
Yeah.
So.
When Nathaniel went off to school and the house emptied out, Jackie was really kind of blue for a month or two. But it is a reacquainting that's been magnificent. Past few months.
Yeah, there are joys to marriage. I mean, it's just that I think people think they can't make it because I have to be honest. Many times, the parents didn't make it, the grandparents didn't make it, the aunts and uncles didn't make it. They don't have a model of people making it. People on TV don't make it. The movie stars don't make it. All that, but some movie stars do make it. You just don't hear about them. But But I think it's not a cynicism as much as about marriage, as much as I think it's a sense of defeat that nobody can do this now. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think, surround yourself by people who've done it well and ask vulnerable questions to say, hey, did you go through this? Is this weird? Because I think you'll often find like, oh no, these are normal kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think, so today actually, we got a babysitter to go out to lunch together. My wife and I, just to like have some time without the kids and just have a little middle of the day date because it doesn't work to try to do that stuff at night.
Did you get some barbecue?
We went to, I'm trying to do keto. So we went to Fogo de Chão and had a ton of meat. It was Brazilian steak.
Wait, don't try to do
lucky.
keto. You just do keto.
What do you? Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of how good bread is.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
So,
cookies.
Yeah,
cookies are not in keto.
This time of year.
Cookies are not in keto. Never mind. I take back. I retract all further statements regarding keto. I want to talk to you about something. I mean, we've seen Cardinal Zen in Hong Kong imprisoned this year. We've seen ongoing brutality towards Catholics in Nigeria this year. I want to read you an AP story from earlier this month. That involves an arrogant bully. Excuse me, I probably shouldn't characterize people that way, but I meant to say Daniel Ortega. A Nicaraguan court has ordered that a Roman Catholic bishop remain under house arrest on charges of conspiracy and spreading false news, a government media site said Tuesday. The government website said Maragalpa Bishop Rolando Alvarez has been formally charged with those crimes and damaging the Nicaraguan government and society. The damage that the bishop is doing, that the other Catholics are doing, is they have the odd view that people should be free, they should be allowed to govern themselves, they should be allowed to worship God. And this is the nonsense going on in Nicaragua. And I shouldn't have used the word arrogant. I don't know what's in another person's heart, but I can use the word bully. Daniel Ortega is a bully who's abusing Catholics in Nicaragua. I wanted to mention that before we go. Because
persecuting.
Persecuting. And yes. We often overuse the word persecution. There's all sorts of obnoxious things in the state of California about Catholics and people I know who are trying to run ministries and all that. Nobody's persecuting me. It might be annoying and mean, but it's not persecution. What's going on in Nicaragua, what's going on in Hong Kong, what's going on in Nigeria, this is persecution of the church. And in some instances, I'll be honest with you, what's going on in Australia is persecution of the church. So I just wanted to mention the bishop, Bishop Rolando Alvarez, and the others in Nicaragua, and get your take on that. I mean, it's the same commie stuff we've been up to for years. I mean, communists hate Catholics. It's nothing new.
Marxists,
there. These Marxist bullies, and I don't know. That's what I got on it. Joe, what do you got?
Yeah, well, I think one of the takeaways I had is Ortega is the fruit of the Sandinista kind of revolution, which was actively supported by a lot of liberation theologians, and there were a lot of religious priests who were like religious order priests down in Nicaragua who stood up to the Somoza dictatorship and allied themselves too closely with a political movement. And a political movement in this case that was pretty overtly Marxist, was Soviet-backed, was pretty atheistic. And so at the end of it, 4 of the priests who were very closely aligned with this ended up joining the government in appointed positions. 3 of them were suspended. A 4th one was laicized. And then Ortega just got progressively worse. And so I don't know the full history, but I think all 4 of those priests and ex-priests ended up having fallings out with him as he became more dictatorial. And one of them, Edgar Perales, who was the one who was laicized, was actually sentenced to 8 years in prison by Ortega. They had him sentenced. He had been ambassador. He had this career in government. So it was this really tragic trajectory where they were priests who presumably loved God, cared about the people of God. This care for the people of God got them too involved in a social movement that was too closely aligned with the political party. That political party went south, and it cost them not only their vocations, but even the normal human senses of happiness that you might have imagined.
Yeah.
And it seems like it just has been disastrous. If you look, kind of the flip side of that, is like Ortega's argument is that the bishops were too close to the prior regime. And so the argument kind of works in both directions. If you get too cozy with either major party or with either any kind of political movement, it long-term seems like a recipe for disaster.
I feel like there's a subtext to what you're saying, that we Americans who align ourselves too closely with Democrats or Republicans, I feel like did I detect a subtext that was there or not there?
You might have detected a little bit of a subtext. I mean, I think there are going to be issues on which one party or the other is obviously better. I don't mean to suggest an equivalence, particularly on issues like abortion or conversely issues like care for the poor. But if you just lose sight of that all-important difference between those who serve Christ and those who serve a party, even if your goals are the same in the moment, you're not actually playing on the same team.
I think,
if you lose sight of that, it's a disaster.
I think another manifestation of this error is believing that the Catholic Church itself is a political movement.
That's
it's not.
A very grave error. It is not a political movement.
No,
right.
It's an institution created by Jesus Christ for the salvation of souls, for the care of souls. And yet, I think Americans especially, and I don't know, it's the country with which I have the greatest familiarity, but because we are, I think, just so much of our myth is a political myth, and our version of the founding, et cetera, I think that we tend to view our religion in America through this lens of politics, and we think of the church as a political movement. It's not. Right. The other thing that I would say with respect to this is not an uncommon story in Latin America. It happened 100 years ago in Mexico, the identical persecution of the church, and soon what we will be seeing in Nicaragua if this persists is the confiscation of church property, for example. I think already some churchmen have been exiled from Nicaragua,
or escaped Nicaragua.
Which is what was happening in exactly 100 years ago in the 20s in Mexico. And it is funny to think, or funny is the wrong word, but I puzzle over why these things take the form they do in Latin America and not so much in the United States. Maybe our masters don't feel the need for this kind of overt persecution because we're all, strung out on opioids and pornography, so they don't need to persecute us so overtly. But I think maybe a better explanation for it is the Catholic Church, whether sacramentally alive or not, in Latin America and in Mexico, and they certainly are catechetically alive, if that's a good adverb. It nonetheless is the public piety, public Catholic piety is an essential part of the culture of Latin America in a way that it is not even remotely part of the culture here in the United States. And so even if it isn't sacramentally manifested or catechetically manifested, it's still there in the public culture and in the social culture, and that's why the Marxists have to declare war on it.
But I do think there's, if I may make a challenge to our atheist friends who say, well, when people are fully atheists, we'll have governments that are based in reason and justice and not in religious superstition. Where's the evidence of this? Where's the evidence?
Literally open any history book about the 20th century.
Yeah, because I remember I told a young woman, atheist, and in a conversation that probably got more heated than it should have, and I still regret it to this day, but she was a very sincere atheist, and she said, she made that point that atheism would mean a better government, basically. And I said, like the Soviet Union, and she said that they're not atheists in the Soviet Union. That was a political movement, not a philosophical movement. And the Soviet Union had a policy called state atheism. That's what it was called, state atheism. And but they won't accept that these are horrible crimes committed in the name of no God. Whereas they will obsess over every crime committed in the name of God, all of which are crimes, none of which should be celebrated. But come on, there's a pattern here when atheists take power.
A reckoning is coming.
I think I would say this: like, everyone has to live by a moral code, and every government has to live by a moral code where they say these things are okay, these things aren't okay. Without that, you don't have law. And so you either have a moral code given by Jesus Christ, or you have one that's just man-made and invented. And the man-made and invented ones are without fail worse, and often so far worse that it's the stuff of nightmares. It's not an exaggeration. Look at Friedrich Nietzsche in The Gay Science. He says God is dead, and we've killed him. And he immediately says this is, the worst crime imaginable. What water will cleanse us from this blood? And his argument is we must become gods. And it paves the way very quickly for Nazism. I know, Nietzsche may not himself have been an anti-Semite and Nazi, but his stuff was certainly used in that direction. And it's a direct line that if there is no God, then there's no check against the state telling you this is the good you must pursue, that's the evil you must avoid. This is why, like, when you see a totalitarian regime, invariably they end up going to war with the church. Invariably, they end up going to war with religion. Like, if you understand anything about the history of the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany or North Korea or communist China, fill in the blank, always there's this part where, and then they heavily persecuted religion. Why? Because religion is offering a different moral vision of the world. Yeah. And so if you are totalitarian and you have a totalizing vision of the world, there's no room for a religious system because that's a threat to that vision.
Not that I think most of our atheist friends would persecute the church themselves. I'm just saying that stop saying like it's some kind of panacea, that government's going to be better.
No, exactly. I don't think atheists are inherently totalitarians.
No,
I think religion is an important check against totalitarianism. Right. And I think that's an important distinction. Like, it's worth realizing the 20th century actually was worse than any prior century. And it was the least religious century. This is not a coincidence. It's not just the technology got better. Yeah. It's actually that the systems by which men live.
That and the invention of the machine gun.
Yes.
I mean, there were certain technological advances that assisted with the carnage in the 20th century. But I mean, even if you gave a machine gun to, I don't know, pick your medieval villain, Richard the Lionheart or whatever, he wouldn't have done with the machine gun what the Kaiser did with it, So there's a moral decline that went with that technological advance. So what do we do for Nicaragua? Well, we should remember Nicaragua, pray for Nicaragua, pray for the bishop. I don't know, maybe call our Congress people and say, why is not more pressure being put on the bully Daniel Ortega to knock this off? I don't know, what else can we do for Nicaragua?
In the Cristero War, the United States was on the wrong side.
Yeah, right.
Under Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I think this is something I wish there had been. There was the Amazonian Synod. I wish there was a Latin American Synod that just looked at this question. That this is a part of the world that was really aggressively evangelized for 600 years. And in which the faith doesn't seem to have taken the roots it ought to have in men's relationship with his fellow man. And obviously, there are a million counterexamples to that. Obviously, there are saints abundantly throughout Latin America. And yet the history of the state level kind of questions have been really tragic. It has not been, maybe you could say the same about medieval Europe, but certainly modern Europe is much more peaceful than modern Latin America has been. And given how Catholic the area is, I think it's worth us asking some hard questions about why did we not do a better job evangelizing and changing hearts.
And then there's the matter of the United States. And its relationship with coups and various things in Latin America. But the music saves us from having to discuss that. Joe Heschmeyer, thanks very much. I hope you have a Merry Christmas.
And likewise with you guys.
Cy, if our listeners want to do something great for their spouse, and they don't even have to shop for this, they just go to CatholicAnswersConference.com and buy your spouse a ticket to our conference next year.
She's getting that's what Missy's getting this year. I just
she
decided
gets to come for free. So
Well, I didn't.
CatholicAnswersConference.com.
You didn't say you had to spend money on this thing. You just said give it to her. Chris Check, thank you. Merry Christmas.
God bless you, brother. Merry Christmas to you. You guys are great.
We'll see you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.